Hey guys, I am hiding working in my bedroom today because we have three dogs in the house. Anyways, what I want to talk about today are the taxes in Lee County. And I don't know if you're getting a lot of these questions about, current tax bills and what future tax bills will be, but this is extremely important that we can understand and explain to the customers what the situation is. Now, typically speaking, I have been with the mindset as to I'm not a, property tax expert. You can, contact the county on that, or here's what they currently are. They're going to be reassessed, and just was very generic with that just because I didn't want to say, oh, the tax bill is only this much money. And then in the next year, when they get reassessed, they hate me. I always just kind of wanted to leave it open ended. However, I just had a situation pop up on a higher priced home that basically had been homestead for like 20 years, over, no, almost 30 years. So the current tax bill was like $3,500 a year, and the potential tax bill when I used the LEPA tax estimator was almost $12,000. With my people getting a loan, this was a significant difference of like $900 a month that their mortgage payment could be from the first year to the next year if this were in fact what had happened. That was the worst case scenario on the tax estimator. So maybe me, I went in and I did a little more investigating. I went back through several of my customers who had purchased in the last 2-3 years, just so I could get an understanding on how much their assessed values really did go up from year to year over year. And most of them were not very significant at all. And then I just went back through the whole history. So, like for instance, on this specific house, we were about to go in at like 770,000 for a purchase price. So I was just curious because I had put in 770,000 in the tax estimator as a worst case scenario, and I went back to look, and it had been assessed even in our peak. So 2006, which would have been based on 2005 values because everything's in arrears here, it was only assessed at 460. Now we know that those prices were about the same as where we are now. So I kind of put 460 in as an estimator and realized that the tax bill would maybe go to like $7,000. The other thing to keep in mind is that our millage rates could change. It could go up or down also. So not just the assessed value, but the millage rate could go up. The other thing to consider is if they're going to be able to homestead that property, they lock in their first year and it can only go up 3% a year thereafter. That's significant to understand as well. I called the county and I spoke to a really nice lady there who went over this with me and how they come up with their numbers. And she's basically said, yes, if there was only one home that was sold that year, then that home would be assessed at 85% of the purchase price. So we should never be putting in that purchase price. It should always be like 85% is what she's kind of suggesting. And that would be then our kind of worst case scenario. However, there was some caveats to that. So for instance, it's based upon comps. So we understand comps, right? And so they take their comps probably a little differently than we would, but basically similar homes in that area would also be comp that had sold in that previous year. And so let's just say that this home was kind of on the higher end of the comps. Their tax bill would probably be less than they were expecting. But if somebody got a really good deal on a property and they're thinking, okay, well, I only paid 500 for my house, my tax bill should be off of 500, but then all the comps were in 700, then their tax bill is also going to be at that 700. So we need to kind of understand that and also explain that to the customer that it's based upon comps. It's not based upon your purchase price. It's not based upon the seller's current tax value. It's based upon that previous year's sales of similar properties in the area. And also to remind them if they're going to homestead that is super important. They can do that January 1st of that year up until March 1st. They can file that homestead exemption, and then they lock in at whatever that rate is. They can only go up 3% per year as long as it's homestead. Excuse me. I think that this is significant. This is like the most in-depth I've really gone with it because I almost feel like it's a crapshoot. And even the nice lady I was speaking to at the Lee County appraiser's office kind of said, yeah, it's complicated. Obviously, they're going off a data and they have rules they have to follow from the state in order to come up with those values. But when I look at it, I don't really think that things are going to go that significant. And then also to think about in 2, 3 years, things should slow down or maybe even go down. And then their tax value may adjust again at that point. So we really, I guess the bottom line is we can't give them any definitive, even the county can't give them definitive. That's what the tax estimator's there for, but to let them know that that's kind of a worst case scenario and more to maybe look at about 80% of the purchase price. And then that's also based upon the comps, whether they're buying in the higher end of the market, the lower end of the market, what are those comps going to suggest? So I hope this is helpful to you, and go do some research and look at this. When you're in Lee, PA, like I'm on this property now, underneath the property description, it says current working values. And on the right, there's this little graph you can click, and then it'll open up the whole property value history. This one goes back to the date it was built, the year after it was built, and then it goes all the way to last year, and it shows you the market assessed, the capped assessed, their exemptions, and what they were actually taxed on. So that way you can, have an understanding of it. The only other caveat I do want to mention is apparently the school board taxes are not capped, so they will continue to go with whatever the market assessed is, even if it's homesteaded. So give that little caveat to your customers also, just to know that when they see that line item for the school board taxes, that it will not be at the same assessed value as the rest of their line items. I hope this is helpful. You can call the county like I did and ask more questions, or have your customers do that to get a better understanding of this. But it's important that we delve down to understand this to be able to explain it to our customers as well.